Have you ever looked at your dating history and felt like you were trapped in some cosmic joke? Same personality, different face, same toxic patterns, different name, same emotional chaos, different relationship. Sarah sits across from me, tears in her eyes, describing her third narcissistic boyfriend in 5 years. "It's like I have a magnet for these people," she whispers. "Am I cursed? Am I broken? Why do I keep choosing the same type of person over and over again?" But here's what Sarah doesn't realize yet, and what you might not realize either. You're not choosing them. Your unconscious is choosing them. And until you understand why, you'll keep repeating the same painful pattern, wondering why love feels like a battlefield instead of a sanctuary. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But he meant something deeper than simple annoyance. He was talking about a psychological mechanism so powerful, so hidden, that most people never discover it's running their entire emotional life. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how your unconscious mind creates these toxic attractions, how your disowned parts, what Jung called the shadow, magnetically pull in people who express what you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. And most importantly, how understanding this can finally break the cycle that's been destroying your peace. If you've ever wondered why you keep attracting energy vampires, why healthy people seem boring, or why your relationships follow the same destructive script, then what you're about to discover will change everything. Picture this. You're 5 years old and you get angry at your little brother. You express that anger naturally as children do, but instead of helping you understand your emotions, you're told, "Good children don't get angry. Anger is bad. You need to be nice." So you learn to push down that anger. You smile when you want to scream. You say, "It's okay," when it's absolutely not okay. You become the good child, the nice person, the one who never rocks the boat. But here's what nobody told you. That anger didn't disappear. It went into your shadow. Jung understood that the shadow contains all the parts of ourselves we've rejected, denied, or been taught are unacceptable. It's not just negative traits. It includes positive qualities too. The part of you that could say no, the part that could be selfish when needed, the part that could set boundaries without guilt. Every time you were told, "Don't be selfish," a piece of healthy selfishness went into the shadow. Every time you were praised for being so understanding, your ability to stop understanding toxic behavior got buried deeper. Every time you avoided conflict to keep the peace, your capacity for healthy confrontation was exiled. And here's the devastating truth. Whatever you exile from your conscious personality doesn't disappear. It starts showing up in your relationships, projected onto other people. Think about the last person who really triggered you, the one who made your blood boil just by existing. What quality did they have that you couldn't stand? Their arrogance, their selfishness, their inability to consider others. Now, I want you to sit with this uncomfortable question. How might that exact quality exist in you in a form you refuse to see? The narcissist you can't stand might be expressing the healthy self-love you never learned. The selfish person who triggers you might be demonstrating the boundaries you're too afraid to set. The cold person who irritates you might be showing you the emotional independence you desperately need but have never allowed yourself. Your shadow doesn't just attract people randomly. It has a specific agenda. It wants integration. It wants wholeness. And if you won't consciously acknowledge these disowned parts, your psyche will create relationships that force you to encounter them in other people. This is why healthy, balanced people often seem boring to you. They're not expressing your shadow qualities in extreme ways. They're not triggering the parts of you that need integration. So your unconscious dismisses them as not exciting or lacking chemistry. But the toxic person, they're like a magnet for your shadow. They express everything you've rejected about yourself in amplified, distorted ways. And your psyche says, "Finally, here's someone who can carry these disowned parts for me." Let me tell you about projection, because this is where it gets really twisted. Projection is the psychological mechanism where you unconsciously attribute your own thoughts, feelings, and motivations to other people. But it's not just about seeing your qualities in others. It's about using other people as a screen to play out your internal conflicts. When Sarah attracts narcissists, she's not just unlucky. She's unconsciously seeking people who will express the healthy narcissism, the self-love, the boundary setting, the refusal to overgive, that she's banished from her own personality. But here's the cruel irony. Because these qualities show up in toxic, exaggerated forms in the people she chooses, she gets to maintain her identity as the selfless, giving person while experiencing selfishness vicariously through her partners. She gets to be the victim of their selfishness instead of owning her own need for healthy self-focus. She gets to complain about their lack of empathy instead of acknowledging her own need to stop being so empathetic that she loses herself. This is the projection trap. You attract people who carry your shadow in distorted ways, then you react to them as if their behavior has nothing to do with you. But every strong emotional reaction you have is showing you something about yourself. The person who uses you is showing you how you use yourself. The person who doesn't see you is reflecting how you've made yourself invisible. The person who takes advantage of your kindness is demonstrating what happens when kindness has no boundaries. And the most devastating part, you become addicted to these dynamics because they feel familiar, they feel like home, not because they're healthy, but because they're recreating the internal split you've been carrying your whole life. You think you want a healthy relationship, but your unconscious is more interested in wholeness, and sometimes the path to wholeness leads through some very dark territory. Carl Jung didn't see the human psyche as separate from energy. For him, our mind is like an energy system, and every thought, emotion, and interaction either charges us or depletes us. But here's what most people don't understand about toxic relationships. They're not just draining because the other person is difficult. They're draining because you're using massive amounts of psychic energy to maintain projections that shouldn't exist. Think about it. How much energy does it take to constantly react to someone else's behavior, to analyze their motives, to try to change them, to defend yourself against their actions, to ruminate about what they said or didn't say? Every time you react to your partner's selfishness instead of developing your own healthy selfishness, you're bleeding energy. Every time you try to make someone more empathetic instead of learning to be less empathetic yourself, you're exhausting your life force. The energy vampire isn't just the toxic person in your life, it's the entire projection system you've created to avoid looking at yourself. When you project your disowned qualities onto others, you become dependent on them to express those parts of you. You need them to be selfish so you can stay selfless. You need them to be cold so you can stay overly warm. You need them to be irresponsible so you can stay over-responsible. But this creates a terrifying dependency. Your psychological balance depends on other people behaving in specific ways, and when they don't, when they change or leave, your entire sense of self starts to crumble. That's why leaving toxic relationships feels so hard. It's not just about losing the person, it's about losing the psychological function they served. Without them, you'd have to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Without the narcissist, you'd have to develop your own healthy narcissism. Without the irresponsible partner, you'd have to learn to be less responsible. Without the cold person, you'd have to develop your own emotional boundaries. And that's terrifying, because it means changing your entire identity. Now we come to the hardest truth of all. You're not just attracting toxic people by accident. Part of you is choosing them. Part of you needs them. Because toxic relationships feel alive. They feel dramatic. They feel like something is happening. The highs are intoxicating, the lows are devastating, and the whole thing feels like you're finally, truly living. But healthy relationships, they feel boring, predictable, like there's no chemistry, no spark, no excitement. Do you know why? Because healthy people aren't carrying your shadow for you. They're not expressing your disowned parts in extreme ways. They're not triggering the parts of you that need integration. A healthy person won't let you overgive because they have their own boundaries. They won't be overly selfish because they've integrated their selfishness in balanced ways. They won't be emotionally unavailable because they've learned to be present. And without these projections to maintain, without these shadow dynamics to navigate, the relationship feels flat, like nothing is happening, like you're not growing or changing or being challenged. But here's what you're missing. The excitement you feel in toxic relationships isn't love, it's your psyche trying to heal itself through someone else. The drama isn't passion, it's your unconscious working overtime to integrate parts of yourself through external conflict. True intimacy doesn't feel like a roller coaster. It feels like coming home. It feels like peace. It feels like you can be yourself without performance, without projection, without losing pieces of your soul to maintain the connection. But to experience that kind of love, you have to do the one thing you've been avoiding your entire life. You have to reclaim your shadow. Integration doesn't mean becoming the toxic person you've been attracting. It means becoming whole. It means reclaiming the disowned parts of yourself in healthy, balanced ways. If you keep attracting narcissists, you need to develop healthy narcissism, not the pathological kind that damages others, but the self-love that says, my needs matter too, my time is valuable, I deserve to be treated well. If you keep attracting selfish people, you need to reclaim your own healthy selfishness. The kind that can say no without guilt, that can choose yourself when necessary, that can stop giving until you're empty. If you keep attracting emotionally unavailable people, you need to develop your own emotional boundaries, the ability to not absorb everyone else's feelings, to maintain your own center, to be present without losing yourself. This is shadow work, and it's the most important work you'll ever do. Start by paying attention to your triggers. What qualities in others make you react with intense emotion? These are your projected shadow qualities. Instead of judging them in others, ask yourself, how might I need to develop this quality in a healthy way? The person who seems too confident might be showing you that you need more self-confidence. The person who seems too boundaried might be demonstrating the boundaries you need to set. The person who seems too independent might be reflecting the independence you need to develop. Begin practicing these qualities in small ways. If you always say yes, practice saying no to small requests. If you always put others first, practice putting yourself first in minor situations. If you always explain yourself, practice not explaining for a day. Notice how uncomfortable this feels. Notice how guilty you feel. Notice how much your identity resists these changes. This discomfort is proof that you're touching something real, something that's been buried for years. As you integrate these shadow qualities, something miraculous begins to happen. Your attraction to toxic people starts to fade, not because you're forcing yourself to avoid them, but because you no longer need them to carry these parts of yourself. When Sarah finally understood her pattern, when she began to reclaim her healthy selfishness and develop real boundaries, something shifted. The narcissists in her life started to feel boring. Their behavior, that once felt intoxicating, now felt repetitive and draining. She started noticing men she'd previously overlooked, men who had their own boundaries, who didn't need her to be their emotional caretaker, who were interested in mutual growth rather than one-sided giving. At first, these connections felt strange. Where was the drama? Where was the intensity? Where was the feeling of being desperately needed? But gradually, she began to appreciate something she'd never experienced before. Peace, the ability to be herself without performance, the joy of being with someone who enhanced her life rather than consuming it. This is what happens when you stop projecting your shadow and start integrating it. You stop being a magnet for people who need to use you to feel whole. You start attracting people who are already whole, who want to share wholeness with you. Your relationships transform from unconscious shadow dances to conscious partnerships, from projection screens to genuine intimacy, from addictive drama to sustainable love. But this transformation requires something that most people aren't willing to give. It requires you to let go of the identity you've built around being the victim, the giver, the one who loves too much. It requires you to embrace the parts of yourself you've been taught are unacceptable, to become selfish when selfishness serves love, to become boundaried when boundaries protect your heart, to become independent when independence makes you a better partner. Right now, you have a choice. You can continue the pattern you've always followed. You can keep attracting the same toxic people, having the same painful relationships, wondering why love feels like a battlefield. You can keep projecting your shadow onto others, giving away your power, waiting for someone else to change so you can finally be happy. Or you can do something different. You can look in the mirror and ask the hardest question of all. What is this pattern trying to teach me about myself? You can begin the work of integration, of reclaiming the parts of yourself you've disowned, of becoming whole, not through another person, but through your own conscious choice. This work isn't easy. It will challenge everything you think you know about yourself. It will make you uncomfortable, guilty, and sometimes terrified. You'll feel like you're losing yourself when you're actually finding yourself for the first time, but on the other side of this work is something you've never experienced before. The ability to love without losing yourself. The capacity to be in relationship without projection. The freedom to choose partners based on compatibility rather than unconscious compulsion. The ability to finally, truly be loved for who you are, not for the role you play in someone else's psychological drama. So I ask you now, looking directly into your eyes, are you ready to stop being controlled by your unconscious projections? Are you willing to reclaim the parts of yourself you've been giving away to toxic people? Are you brave enough to discover that the person you've been looking for in all these wrong relationships is actually you? The choice is yours. But know this, every day you wait, every toxic relationship you enter, every projection you maintain is another day you're not living as your whole, integrated self. Your shadow is waiting, your wholeness is calling, and somewhere out there, the healthy love you've always wanted is looking for the integrated you that you're capable of becoming. The question is, will you answer the call? If this message resonates with you, if you're ready to stop the pattern and start the integration, write in the comments, I choose wholeness. Let's see how many of you are ready to stop attracting toxic people and start attracting the love you actually deserve. And remember, this is just the beginning. The real work starts when you close this video and begin looking at your own projections, your own shadow, your own path to integration. Your future self, the one who loves and is loved in healthy, whole ways, is waiting for you to begin.